Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test, continuing on with the CDL manual for air brakes in the state of California. Today we're talking about Section 5.4, and Section 5.4 is essentially how to brake with an air brake equipped vehicle. And one thing that you need to keep in mind, do not pump a brake pedal on an air brake equipped vehicle, because when you push down on the service brakes and then you release them, when you release the service brakes, the air is exhausted into the atmosphere because air only travels one way through the system. Just like a train on a railway track, it only goes one way. You can't go two ways on the track. Just like air in the system, it can't go two ways. So when you're finished making a service brake application, it's exhausted into the atmosphere. If you pump the brakes, you'll lower the air pressure in the system. So you simply brake normally as you would in any other vehicle. And today we're going to go through the components of how to brake normally with an air brake equipped vehicle, Section 5.4 of the CDL manual for the state of California. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test. Welcome back. Talking to you today about Section 5.4 of the CDL manual for the state of California, which is air brakes. And this section is essentially on how to use air brakes. ABS brakes. We talked about ABS brakes in Section 5.1. I'll put a card up here for you for Section 5.1. If you go over to that video, just click on the description box below the video for Show More, and it will give you a list of topics that are covered in the video, and just click on the time there and it'll take you right to the ABS section for that video. ABS brakes. Most of the time you're going to brake normally. You need to know whether you have ABS brakes on your commercial vehicle, and there's two ways for certain that you can tell you have ABS brakes on either the truck, bus, or the trailer that you're operating. First is there will be a light on the dash. When you turn the key to the on position, the ABS light will come on momentarily and then go out. You want to be certain whether you have ABS brakes on the vehicle. Go out, find the air line out to the brake chambers. If the vehicle has ABS brakes, which in this day and age most of them will have, there will be an electrical line zippy tied to the air line and going out to the brake chamber. That electrical line is going out to the sensor which detects wheel spin on the wheels, and you know that you have ABS brakes. Most of the time you're going to brake normally. In hard emergency situations, you're going to hold the brake pedal down hard and hold it and look in the direction that you want to drive. The purpose of ABS brakes is for the driver to maintain control of the vehicle and maintain steering. If we lock up the steer tires, we lose our steering, and thus we have ABS brakes. Look in the direction you want to steer and steer around the obstacle or whatever is in your path that you potentially could collide with. There are two ways out of an emergency situation. One is braking, and one is steering. Steering is always faster. It is always faster to steer out of an emergency situation. The challenge with steering out of an emergency situation is that you need some place to go. In other words, you need space around your vehicle. So when you're driving a large commercial vehicle, you need to increase your following distance, especially as road conditions deteriorate. In ideal conditions, your minimum following distance should be 5 seconds. We measure in time. Put another video up here about why we measure in time and how to measure following distance. So steering around an obstacle or other hazard on the roadway, you need space to drive into, so create space around your vehicle. And as I always tell students, the one place that you can always create space and control space in your vehicle is the space in front of your vehicle. And if you don't think you can control that space in front of your vehicle, leave a comment down in the comment section there. We'll have a discussion about that. One of the hazards of ABS vehicles is that potentially with a truck you could hook up to a trailer that doesn't have ABS brakes. In an emergency situation, you're pushing down and holding the brake pedal as you do on ABS equipped vehicles. The problem with that is that the trailer has normal brakes, and you need to watch in the mirror to make sure that the trailer isn't coming around and you couldn't potentially jackknife. One last point about ABS brakes. If the ABS light comes on the dash and stays on, it means that your ABS isn't working. On some older vehicles, the ABS light will go out once you attain a forward speed of 5 miles per hour. But if it comes on and stays on, it means your ABS isn't working. You still have normal brakes. You can still operate the vehicle. Just know that the ABS aren't going to be working, and you will need to do something called threshold braking, or as they call it here in the California state manual, stab braking, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in an upcoming section. Emergency stops. Two types of emergency stops. The first one is controlled braking, where you apply the brakes to the point of wheel lockup, just short of wheel lockup, so you don't actually lock up the wheels. Look in the direction you want to steer. Small movements on the steering wheel, less than a quarter turn. Small movements in the event of trying to steer around a hazard on the roadway. Most of it is less than a quarter of a turn to get around that obstacle. And controlled braking, just short of wheel lockup. The other type of emergency stop is stab braking, when you push down on the brake as hard as you can, lock up the wheels, and then release the brake pedal, allow the wheels to start turning, and then hit it hard again. Both of these will work for either a single unit or a combination vehicle with a trailer on. Just note that when you're doing hard emergency braking in a combination vehicle, you risk jackknifing. If you can read the side of the trailer in the mirror, that's not a good thing. Not a good thing. So make sure you're looking in the mirror, make sure you're watching that trailer come around. And this is kind of an experience thing for truck drivers, because new drivers are not looking in the mirror. They're more concentrated on what's going forward. So as you gain a bit of an experience in braking a combination vehicle, you need to be looking forward and you need to be looking in the mirror as well. It's a little bit when you learn how to turn. You need to be looking forward and you need to be looking in the mirror. It's kind of that 70-30 thing, 30% forward, 70% in the mirror. Emergency stops, controlled or stab braking. Stopping distance. In a large commercial vehicle, your stopping distance is going to be approximately a third more than it would be in a car or light truck. So know that you need a lot more space to get that commercial vehicle stopped. Thus, increase following distance in large commercial vehicles, which is approximately 5 seconds. The other thing that you need to deal with in large commercial vehicles equipped with air brakes is brake lag. Brake lag is approximately half a second. It's the delay from the time that you actually push down on the brake pedal to the time that the brakes activate. And conversely, from the time that you release the brake until the brakes actually release. So brake lag, that's a term you need to know for the purposes of a road test. It's the delay from the time you put your foot on the brake pedal to the time that the brakes actually apply. Brake lag figures in the braking and stopping distance of large commercial vehicles. As well, you need to know that speed, increased speed, impacts exponentially your stopping distance. The higher the speed, the greater the distance that you're going to need. And the example in the manual that they give you at approximately 55 miles an hour, in ideal conditions on dry pavement with good traction and good tires, you're going to need approximately 450 feet to get a semi-truck stopped. That is a great deal of distance, so make sure you have good following distance behind other vehicles so you can get the unit stopped. The parts that make up total stopping distance, not to be confused with braking distance or stopping distance, because both of those are a component in total stopping distance. Within total stopping distance, you have perception time. Perception is you seeing and recognizing a hazard. Reaction time, the time it takes you to get your foot off the accelerator and onto the brake pedal. Brake lag, the half a second or so delay from the time that you put your foot on the brake pedal to the brakes actually engaging. And then you have stopping distance. That's the actual physical distance it takes from the moment the brakes apply to the time that the vehicle actually comes to a stop. All of those components, perception time, reaction time, brake lag, and stopping distance or braking distance, whichever one you choose, give you total stopping distance. And for a large commercial vehicle, this is always a third to a half more of what it would be in a car or light truck. Brake fade is the overheating of the brakes and the brake drums expanding away from the shoes, and the shoes will no longer come in contact with the brake drums and you lose braking capability. This is often a result of hard downhill braking and holding the brakes on. And in this day and age, with engine brake technology and brake technology, you need to work really hard to experience brake fade, or unfortunately you were not properly trained in proper downhill braking techniques. I'll put a video up here for you for the complete video on downhill braking and how to do it correctly. It's important for you to get in the right gear before you come down over the top of the hill so you don't overheat the brakes. In a 13 or 18 speed, 5 low in a tandem. In most US states you're going to be running tandem with a maximum of 80,000 pounds. In a 13 or 18 speed, if you're in 5 low and you come down over the hill with the jake brake on full, that jake brake will hold that truck all the way down the hill. and you won't have to use the service brakes. Now, if you do find yourself having to use the service brakes at all, to avoid brake fade, hard, short, intermittent brake applications. So that means is that you run it up, bring the tach up to 1800 RPM. I wouldn't suggest when you got the Jake brake on you have it much higher than 1800 RPM. It's just too hard in the diesel engine. Bring it up to 1800 RPM, hard, short brake application. Bring it down to 1400 RPM and let it run back up again, and then a hard, short, intermittent brake application. What happens then is that you've got the brakes off for a period of time and the air goes over the drums and dissipates the heat into the atmosphere. So the brakes have time to cool and they won't heat up on you if you're braking correctly. In the manual it does say 5 miles an hour. 5 miles an hour is a good indicator. Most of the time that's going to work for you, especially if you're downhill braking for the purposes of a road test. But engine brakes work best at high RPMs in low gears. So fifth is a low gear going down the hill. High engine RPMs at 1800 is going to give you your best braking capabilities with an engine brake. So run it up to 1800 and then brake hard. Bring it down to 1500 and let it run back up again. But like I said, if you get it into fifth low and you come down over that hill, the engine brake's going to hold it back and you're not going to have to use the service brakes. One other note, remember, you can go down a hill 1,000 times too slow. One time you go down too fast, you may not be around to go down again. So always better to go down too slow until you know the hill, know your truck, and get some experience, and you can go a bit faster. So brake fade, overheating the brakes, the drums expand away from the shoes and the shoes will no longer come in contact with the drums no matter how hard you push down on that brake pedal. There's also some chemical changes that go on in there as well as you put more heat to the shoes and pads and whatnot, and they become gooey and sticky, and eventually if you put enough heat to them they'll catch fire, and then you got leprechauns chasing you down the road with marshmallows wanting a weenie roast. So brake fade, overheating the brakes, don't do it. Proper braking technique, I talked about in the previous section on brake fade, on how to brake downhill safely. As it says here in the manual, bring your speed down 5 miles per hour. So if the maximum speed limit or the speed limit posted for trucks and commercial vehicles going down a hill is 40 miles per hour, come down over the hill, let the speedometer go up to 40 miles an hour, and then hard, short, intermittent brake application that will allow you to bring the speed down to 35 miles per hour, and then let it run back up to 40 and continue to do that. Hard, short, intermittent brake applications. This way the brakes are off for a period of time. It has the air come back over the drums and dissipate the heat into the atmosphere. It gives the brakes some time to cool. Downhill braking, hard, short, intermittent brake applications, bring your speed down 5 miles per hour. If you're in the right gear though, as I said previously, the engine brake will hold the vehicle back and you won't need to use the service brakes at all, especially in this day and age. Engine brake technology is really, really good. Low pressure warning. As I said in the introduction, don't pump the brakes on an air brake equipped vehicle. When you pump the brakes, you lower the air pressure in the system. If the low warning device comes on, the low air warning device comes on, get the vehicle pulled over, figure out why you have an air loss. Sometimes if you're running a tractor trailer unit, it's just one of the glad hands has come off and you just need to put the glad hand back on and carry on down the road. If you do actually have an air leak, determine what the air leak is, get it repaired, and carry on. Now, oftentimes there's enough air in the system and the compressor will pump enough air that you can get that vehicle pulled over someplace safe. And as I say to students, don't pull over on the side of the interstate. Oh my God, that is a dangerous place. There's too many videos called sitting duck and too many vehicles that have been run into that are parked on the side of the interstates. If you can get it down to an exit ramp, don't pull off on the exit ramp, go up to the end of the exit ramp, pull over onto the side of the highway, or pull over onto the on-ramp where traffic is getting onto the freeway. Much safer there than it is out on the side of the freeway. Let me tell you, I've been broken down on the side of the freeway a couple times. It is not a safe place to be stopped and checking to see whether you have an air leak. Oftentimes there's enough air in the system you can get down to a safe place and get pulled in and check the vehicle in a safe location. As I said, interstates, side of the interstate is not a safe place. Low air warning, if you ignore the low air warning at 60 pounds or 55 pounds and it goes down to 20 to 45, eventually those spring brakes are going to come on all by themselves and you're going to be stuck wherever you are. The last place you want to be stuck is out on the freeway, you know, in the center lane on 3 lanes. So don't ignore the low air warning. Get that vehicle off the road as quickly as possible and determine what your air leak is. Parking brakes. Right down at the bottom of this section here in bold, it says, never get out of the vehicle without applying the parking brakes. To veteran truck drivers such as myself, getting out of the truck without the parking brakes applied is kind of a novel idea. I have had students do it a couple of times and the vehicle kind of rolls away a little bit. Usually I'm sitting in the passenger seat and reach over and pull the parking brakes on. I know that most people who drive cars and light trucks don't use the parking brakes, but in commercial vehicles, every time you get out of the seat, pop those buttons on. So there's two buttons on the dash. The yellow four-sided parking control valve, that controls the vehicle's parking brakes on a single unit, bus or truck. Pop it out, it exhausts the air to the spring brake chambers. The spring expands, applies the brakes on the vehicle, and the vehicle is parked indefinitely. On a tractor-trailer combination, you'll have two buttons. You'll have the yellow four-sided parking control valve, and you'll have the trailer supply valve. It is a 8-sided red button that controls air supply to the trailer. Pop that out as well. In the manual, it also says that some older units will have a round blue button for applying the tractor brakes independent of the trailer brakes. I think I've only ever seen one vehicle that had one of those blue buttons. The round blue button doesn't exist. It's a yellow four-sided button and a red 8-sided button. Those are the two buttons that control the parking brakes on a vehicle. If you're in a transit bus, it'll be reverse. To apply the parking brakes, you push the button in, and to release the parking brakes, you pull the button out. It's the reverse. If you're driving transit, usually most transit companies train their drivers, so you'll learn how to do that. The last thing that they say here is if the brakes are very hot or the brakes are wet, if you're driving in freezing rain, don't apply the brakes. Two things you can do to secure the vehicle. Either put wheel chocks in. Most guys won't have wheel chocks on their tractor trailer. The other thing you do is park the vehicle on level ground and lower down the dollies on the trailer. That'll hold the truck as well. However, I did have the trailer brakes freeze on once, and after that I just got in the habit of just applying the truck brakes. Generally there's enough heat generated from the drivetrain of the truck that it will keep the brakes from freezing on the truck. On the trailer there just isn't enough heat generated back there, so I just got to the point where I held my thumb on the trailer supply valve and then just pulled out the truck brakes. That's one of the habits that I got into. However, for the purposes of your license, don't do that. Make sure you apply both parking brakes on the truck and trailer. After you start driving though, stick your thumb on that trailer brake and just apply the truck brakes. If you're on a really steep grade, you'll want to apply both parking brakes. But just get in the habit of large commercial vehicle. Every time you get out of the seat, apply the parking brakes. Review questions. Turn off the video, answer the review questions, and then come back, turn the video back on, and we'll go through the review questions together. So take a moment and do that. Why should you be in the proper gear before you start over the top of the hill? You start going down that hill and you try to get a gear, it's really unlikely that you're not going to get a gear, especially if you don't have a whole lot of experience. I've been in trucks with students who've been careening down the hill and are not in gear. As well, if you get the vehicle in the proper gear before you go down over the top of the hill, the engine brake will hold that vehicle back and is really good because engine brake technology has moved forward, and if you get it in the right gear, then the engine brake will hold it back. Engine brakes work best at high RPM, 1800 in a low gear. So make sure you're in the right gear before you go down over the top of the hill. That way you won't experience brake fade because you overheated the brakes, because you're overusing the brakes in going down a hill in a large commercial vehicle. What factors cause brake fade or brakes to fail? Brakes out of adjustment is one, because some of the brakes that are in adjustment work harder than the brakes that are out of adjustment. Therefore, they're increasing their load and are heating up more. The other way is improper braking techniques. You're not in the right gear before you go down over the top of the hill, and you're using the brakes excessively and not giving them time to cool. In other words, air isn't traveling over the brake drums and dissipating the heat into the atmosphere. Now, if you're going down a long, steep downgrade, most of the time, 80 to 90% of the time, there will be a brake check at the top of the hill. There's a place you pull in with a commercial vehicle and stop and check your brakes to ensure that everything is working properly. As well, there'll be information about the downgrade on a signboard there in the brake check area, so make sure you take note of that information. It will tell you how long the grade is, whether it's 1 mile, 3 miles, or 5 miles. It'll also tell you the descent grade. If it's 8%, the hill drops every 100 feet that you go forward, it drops 8 feet. So know that anything that's single digit is not too bad. Once you start getting up higher and higher, especially if you get into double digits, 10, 11, 12, those are really steep grades. So depending on how steep the grade is and how long it is, will influence and determine what gear you need to be in before you go down over the top of the hill. And again, I'll just reiterate, you can go down a hill too slow 1,000 times. One time you go too fast, you may not get another chance to do it. So always get in a lower gear than what you think you need to go down the hill. 13 or 18 speed, tandem at 80,000 pounds, 5th low with the engine brake on high. And engine brakes work best at high RPM in a low gear. So you want to run them up 1800 RPM. If you need to use the service brakes, bring it down 1400 off the service brakes and let it run back up. Hard, short, intermittent brake application. So holding the brakes on down a steep descent is going to cause brake failure. Brakes out of adjustment is going to increase the load on some of the other brakes and could potentially cause them to overheat. So those are some of the factors that could contribute to brake fade. The use of service brakes on a long steep downgrade is only a supplement to engine brake use. That is true because the engine brake, if you're in the right gear, it's going to hold that vehicle back. You only want to use the service brakes intermittently as a supplement to the engine brake. So the question is true. If you're away from your vehicle for a short time, you should use the parking brakes. True. Every time you get out of that commercial vehicle, make sure you have the parking brakes on. Like I say, as an air brake instructor and a veteran truck driver and bus driver, it is a bit of a foreign concept to me that people would get out of the vehicle and not apply the parking brakes. However, I know in this day and age of automatic transmissions on cars and light trucks, almost 90% of people do not use the parking brake. So in commercial vehicles, it is goes without question. Just use the parking brake. Put it on every time you get out of the vehicle. Question of the test: how often do you drain air tanks on an air brake equipped vehicle? Daily, daily, daily. Answer to the question on the test is daily, daily, daily. Drain the air tanks every day. How do you brake with a tractor trailer unit that is equipped with ABS brakes? Most situations, if you know that the truck and the trailer have ABS brakes, you're going to make hard brake application and hold it. That way the ABS is going to prevent the wheels from locking up and you are going to maintain steering. Now, if you have a combination vehicle where one piece, the truck for example, has ABS and the trailer doesn't, you're going to make a hard brake application, keep your eye in the mirror, make sure that trailer isn't coming around, and release the brakes and allow the trailer to straighten out if it starts coming around. Because the last thing you want to do, and let me tell you from personal experience, you don't want to be able to read the side of the trailer in the mirror. That's just a little off-putting for those of us who've been in the driver's seat and had that happen. So ABS brakes, if both the truck and the trailer have ABS, hard brake application and hold. One piece of the truck and trailer doesn't have ABS, brake under emergency situations either using controlled braking or stab braking, and keep your eye on the mirror and make sure that trailer doesn't start coming around. Last question: you still have normal brakes if the ABS fail, as indicated by the light staying on the dash. That is true. If the ABS fail on your unit, you still have normal brakes on a commercial vehicle. In conclusion, we talked today about California CDL Manual Section 5.4, which is essentially braking techniques and how to brake in an air brake equipped vehicle. The most important thing is not to pump the brakes, because if you pump the brakes, you're going to lower the air pressure in the system, and if the low air warning comes on, you're going to need to get the vehicle pulled over into a safe place and determine why you have an air loss. We also talked about ABS brakes. In most applications, if you've got ABS on the unit, you're going to make a hard brake application and hold. Look in the direction you want to steer and simply steer the vehicle. If you're driving a combination vehicle, you'll need to know if one piece of the unit has ABS and the other doesn't. Then you're going to need to brake differently as you would with normal brakes, either controlled braking or stab braking. And when you're braking in an emergency situation with a combination vehicle, make sure you're looking in the mirror and watching that trailer, that it's not coming around, because potentially it could jackknife. And if it jackknifes, well, there isn't much you can do to control that other than power through it. And if you're in an emergency situation trying to brake, you're not going to be successful in that endeavor. Two ways out of an emergency situation: braking or steering. Steering is much faster, but in order to steer out of an emergency situation, you need some place to go. So you need to control the space around your vehicle, and you can always, always, always control the space in front of your vehicle. And I hope a few people leave some comments about that, because you can control the space in front of your vehicle. As well, brake fade, long downhill grades, and braking downhill. In this day and age of engine brake technology, there's no reason that you should be using your brakes on a long, steep downhill. Engine brakes work best in a low gear at high RPM, up around 1700-1800. If you do need to use the service brakes, hard, short, intermittent brake applications bring the RPM down to about 1400 and then let it run back up again. Stopping distance, total stopping distance. Make sure on your license test you don't get those two things confused, because they're different. Total stopping distance is everything that brings the vehicle to a stop. Perception time, reaction time, brake lag, and stopping distance. Stopping distance, as opposed to total stopping distance, is just the time that the brakes activate to the time that the vehicle comes to a stop. Total stopping distance is everything. Perception time, reaction time, brake lag, and stopping distance. As well, parking brakes. Make sure you put the parking brakes on every time that you stop the unit and get out of the unit. Never, never, ever leave that vehicle without the parking brakes on. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Thanks very much for watching. If you like what you see here, share, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section. All of that helps us out. As well, if you're endeavoring to get your CDL license or endeavoring for a career as a truck or bus driver, check out the videos below. Lots of great information for you to be successful on your CDL license exam and as a career as a truck or bus driver. As well, if you're on a mobile device, check out the cards in the upper right hand corner here. Those cards too will link to videos which will give you more information to be successful on your CDL license exam and in a career as a truck or bus driver. Question for my smart drivers: have you ever experienced brake fade? If you have, leave a comment down in the comment section. Tell us about it. Tell us what happened, because obviously you lived if you're here to tell the story. All of that information helps us out, especially those learning to drive commercial vehicles, and will make them successful and allow them to come home in one piece and alive. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Thanks very much for watching. Good luck on your road test. Remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.